Welcome to the episode of OneForTheMusic. My name is Sarah, and today we'll have the pleasure of talking with Trae Scott. He is a member of the duo Craze Rune. They recently came out with a new album called Generic, and he's going to be talk us through the creative process, the concept behind the album, and just other general things about their music and future plans. But without further ado, let's just jump right into the video. First of all, I want to really thank you for accepting to take part in this project. Yeah. So you're in a band called Craze Rune, right?
Yeah, Craze Rune.
Yeah. My first question is, how did you get together as a band?
We got together as a band a few years back when we were both in college. We were both in college studying music. And my friend had already had some music out as another persona sort of thing. Back then it was called Yeah Boy. It was his persona. And it just sort of stemmed from there. When we were in college, we just sort of like decided to start making music together as a sort of duo. But we weren't making it as Ronan and Trae. We were making it as these characters. So before the name Craze Rune, we were called something else. So there was obviously a big name change there, and now we've just been that way ever since. Yeah. So we got together.
So then, how did you pick your name, or like, why did you choose that name for your band?
Well, before we came up with the name Craze Rune, it was Yaboy and Gregas, and we wanted it to be a more cohesive name, where it, in the sense where it was just like the one sort of name instead of like two names. So it was just Craze Rune, and Ronan pitched it to me, and I absolutely loved the name. And we decided on that name, and it's been that way ever since. I think we've had that name for about a year. Yeah, so excited about that.
I really like it, actually. It's a really cool name.
It is. I think that's part of the reason that we chose it as well, because it is. It's quite cool, and it's quite sort of there's still that sort of element of like mystery to it. Do you know what I mean? Like it creates like quite mysterious, if you like.
Yeah, and it also doesn't, like, ideally, it doesn't feel like it really, as a name, matches the kind of music that you do, but it works in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Like the genre.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, how did you find your own sound and decided to just go in that direction with genre-wise?
Well, there was a lot of experimenting with different sounds, ranging from R&B to disco to trap to alternative. Any sort of genre we experimented with, and just tried to find our sound as a sort of partnership. Try to find our sound, and we settled on a sound that was quite dancey. We've always liked to be dancey and upbeat. We don't really make a lot of like ballads, like slow ballads and stuff like that. So it's always been sort of, anything that we do has always been quite dancey, something that you could dance to. This latest album, Generic, we went for the sort of disco vibe to it, solely because the sort of love and passion we both have for disco music. So it was like really it just felt right to do
Mm.
this sort of album at the time, and I honestly wouldn't change it. It worked out exactly how we wanted it to work out. And yeah, like I said, like both of us absolutely love disco music, so it was just sort of like we're like, well, we're gonna make some disco music.
Yeah, cool. So, well, speaking about your new album, which is, like you mentioned, generic, what were the influences and like what draw the inspiration to write that album?
um, I mean, would you believe me if I said disco? Would you believe me if I said disco?
No, not at all.
I mean, obviously, we were influenced by disco,
Mhm.
but we were also influenced by merging our sort of sound to the disco element of it.
Mhm.
I think there was a few tracks that I was influenced by, sort of like Saturday Night Fever, like pure disco, like walking down the street, like that sort of disco.
Mhm.
We were influenced by just sort of like dance music in general, like just the way we always are. We're always influenced by dance music. We're always influenced by not just a set genre. We're influenced by a lot of things. Like some of our biggest influences are Sophie, Charlie XCX, um, Ariana Grande, Lady
Mhm.
Gaga. A lot of influence. See, there's a lot of sort of different diversity in those sort of names that I just said. So yeah, that's our influences.
So they just kind of merge all together
Yeah,
and
yeah,
feel.
exactly. It's merging all of those influences into one like cohesive project. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
sort
yeah, yeah.
of thingy.
Well, I was giving a listen like to the album, and I was very curious about what is like the concept, or if there's a story behind that album, like a
Yeah,
story.
yeah. Well, obviously as a concept album. There's a lot of there's a lot of real problem problems like topics
Mhm.
included in it. There's a track called OCD Fence, and it's like, do you know how you've got OCD, like obsessive compulsive disorder?
Mhm.
It's a sort of it's a it's a sort of nod to that, but the overall sort of um, sound like meaning of the album is it's sort of split into like three or four different sort of eras. So you've got an era of lost love, era of combat, you've got a era. Oh, my mind's went blank right now. It's obviously split up by interludes and stuff, and there's I can't even I don't even know how to put it into words. It's like the term generic is obviously it's a word generic, but
Mhm.
there's a song also called Gen Up, and me and Ronan say Gen Up, and we mean genuinely. Like if we were to be like, oh, that's genuinely so good, we would say, oh, that's Gen Up so good, or
Okay.
like Gen Up like really. So it's a I guess it's a sort of it's a bit our sort of generation and how
Mhm.
people need to wake up and realize that we're not better than the previous generation. We're not better than the future generation. We are just a generation. You know, we're not. There's nothing special about our generation that isn't special about like our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. So it's just sort of nod to that. So it's a sort of like it's a sort of just like wake up, guys. we're not we're not like God's gifts. So yeah, that's the sort of meaning behind that one. rambled on.
No, don't worry. It's interesting, honestly. And what I think is also interesting is just um, what has the making of the album looked like and been like, and just well, you talked about um, the concept of the album, but does it have a specific like meaning to you too? I mean, or is it still like unrelated to what you just told me?
But the, it's, it has, obviously it has meaning to me, it has meaning to Ronan, it has meaning to me and Ronan combined.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, like I said, it's more a sort of anthem album for other
Mm-hmm.
people. We always like to have our music for other people. Like, we make it, we put it out, it's yours. I mean, obviously it's still ours, but it's
Yeah.
like it's yours, it's your friend, it's everyone. So it's really inclusive. Um, I would say that's what it means to me. The album means to me, and the previous albums mean to me is that it's always inclusive. There's something for everyone on the album, you know, that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, it just sounds really really good. We always like to just stay quite current and fresh. So yeah, I would say that's what it means to me. Like inclusiveness, just listen to it, dance it. So just that's what it means to me.
Mm-hmm. And did you produce it independently, or did you I don't know, work with some um oh my God.
Record label.
Yeah, some record label or
Well, me and Ronan, we both produced it ourselves.
mhm.
We have done since we started. Um, so I guess we're our producer, we're our manager, we're our record label. You know, we're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
combined into just the two of us. It's always been that way, and um, we've made do. We've done what we wanted to do and got messages out. We've got music out without having a like being part of a record label. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I mean, you did a really good job, if I can say that. Um, so like, do you both work on the songwriting aspect, or does someone think about the lyrics and the other person about the like the song, the music itself,
Uh-huh.
or how do you do it?
Well, the way it usually always works is I focus on more of the producing, more of the sort of production, and Ronan focuses more on the lyrics. That's not to say that Ronan doesn't also focus heavily on the production as well.
Mhm.
You know, so um, Ronan's sort of like the mastermind behind the lyrics. He's really good at like, wordplay. He's really good at sort of see sort of like songs that have got like a double meaning and stuff like that. He's really good like that. He's really sort of quick witted. I mean, I'm like that as well, but I don't seem to be like that when I'm writing songs. It's quite hard for me to write songs because I tend to go off track and I tend to sort of start writing stuff solely just because it rhymes with the word and
Okay.
forget that it doesn't actually have true meaning to that song. It doesn't really sort of fit in. The only way it fits in is the fact that it rhymes and it sounds like the previous sentence and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say Ronan's more the songwriting genius and obviously the production, and I'm probably more production side. I mean that's not to say that I haven't wrote songs for our our music and stuff like that. because I have wrote plenty, and I'm quite proud actually of some of the stuff that I have written. It turned out to be really good, so happy about that.
So let's say that when you can focus on one specific subject, the topic, you just
Exactly.
go for it.
Exactly, that's it. That is it.
Well, I don't really know like in what period of time you worked on this album, but did lockdown and COVID affect you in any way, and like how did you overcome certain issues that you might have faced?
Mhm. Well, before lockdown, our way of recording music and sharing music was either in college or in my house, and obviously we didn't have that option during lockdown. So I think we were able to meet up once, just once, and that was the only time that we ever actually met up during lockdown to sort of work on this album. And nearly all of it was sort of produced and mixed in our separate households and just over, sent files over, back and forth. And obviously that's just the way that this album was. I mean, the way it had to be done.
Yeah.
That way. I mean, it had to be done because, I mean, what else are you going to do? Obviously, we can't meet up and stuff like that. So I would say that's obviously COVID affected it a lot, but I don't think that it would have been any different were we together. I think I think the album still ended up in the place that we first visioned it. It ended up in the same sort of the same sound, the same energy that we would have got if we were together, which is brilliant. So yeah, COVID's not going to stop us.
Well, honestly, it doesn't even feel like an album that actually encounters so many issues, because I mean, obviously not meeting up can does cause a lot of problems, but like the result is pretty good. Like you wouldn't tell that you were never in the same place while recording it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's it. Obviously, it would have sounded like that if we were meeting up to record it and share ideas. So I think that, I think it's brilliant that it still stayed the way that we wanted it to stay and turn out. And yeah, I'm proud of that.
Another last question about the album itself, but since you told me that it was like a conceptual album, did the idea behind it came first, or did you already have a few songs and then you built up the concept behind it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this album's by far the longest time that we've sort of spent from the original idea of it to the final production of it and the final release of it. Just because there was lots of sort of aspects that got in the way, like college work, obviously lockdown, a lot of that sort of stuff came into play there. So I think it was, I forgot what I was saying there, sorry. I totally forgot what I was saying there.
Well, you were talking about how things affected it, like obviously lockdown.
Sorry about that. I think lockdown obviously has affected it. The longest sort of time that we spent with the idea, the the process for this album, it was an idea first.
Mhm.
We sort of had the idea, and we sort of had the concept sort of written out first, and sort of had a sort of idea session. Like we would sort of bounce ideas off each other, and
Mhm.
that's the way that it works. It's good like that. So this album started off an idea, and every track was a fresh new idea and a new sound. So yeah.
Well, would you say that working with a concept and building the songs after it um, is easier, harder, or kind of the same as just having like the songs come up and then put them together in an album?
Mhm. Well, I would say it's like half and half. It's kind of the same, but I guess you could say it's easier to
Mhm.
have an idea and a concept first, so that you have an idea of what kind of sound you might want, but also, like for example, like we still made loads of different sort of demos for this album, and we sort of thought, oh, that would be quite good if this was this track, or that
Mhm.
track if it was called that, but I think for this album, it was the idea first, and then sort of
Mhm.
the sounds,
Mhm.
like the sounds of them and stuff like that. We had sort of names and stuff like that, titles, and just sort of built the tracks around the title names, and this just the whole mood of the thingy. Like I was saying before, the sort of it's split into different sections and interludes and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really fun. It's always fun. It is always a fun process making new music, and just like when you make something and you're like, oh my god, that sounds brilliant, and then you send it over and you're like, oh my god, listen to this, it sounds brilliant. So I would say it probably is easier to have the concept first and have the ideas first and then
Mhm.
sound. But that being said, it's weird because if I'm writing music for me and not Craze Rune, I tend to go for a, a track, like a sound first, and then build the sort of the ideas around the track and the sound. Whereas it's kind of the opposite when it's Craze
Yeah.
Rune. It's weird because it's like it's still me, but it's like you know that way.
Yeah, it's like you become like a different persona type of thing.
Yeah, exactly, and that is basically what Craze Rune is. It's the two of us. We're still us, but when we're involved with Craze Rune, we're not so much us, but we still are. Like it's weird. We went through a phase of like sort of hiding our faces, and like there was a big element of mystery behind it because no one knew what we looked like. No one knew our names, and it was almost like it was like a comfort because you could still make music for yourself, but you could also be this person and these people. But
Mhm.
now with the big reveal, now we're just sort of we're Ronan and Trae, and we do
Mhm.
fusion, and yeah, it's good. So yeah.
And was there a reason behind this shift in focus, not in focus, but um, and deciding to actually show, like, reveal your face, your identity?
I think it just came down to the fact that it was just getting a bit complicated and a bit hard to just
Mhm.
upkeep that sort of hiding our faces and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Because it limits the sort of the potential for like taking photographs and videos and stuff like that. You know that way. Whereas if there's an actual face, I mean, people like to put a face to something, like with anything. It could be a beauty brand. People like to see a face. I don't know, a cup brand. People like to see a face. It's like, do you know what I mean? People like to put a face to something, and yeah, I think we just sort of got a bit tired of just having that sort of these personas. So we were like, no, like we're this is us, and yeah, it's been like that since I think just a little bit before the album came out. So yeah, it's been that way since then.
Okay, well, I have just one last question for you, which is like, do you have any future plans or things that you're already working on, or ideas on what you will want to do? Because obviously everything is pretty uncertain at the moment still. But maybe you already are planning on working on something, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, originally we were going to we were working on another project, another album that would most likely come out either next year or the year after. But I think I think with uni and stuff like that, and getting into uni and stuff like that, I think we're going to sort of branch off, and we're going to try write stuff for ourselves, like separate from Craze Rune. So I'm not saying like we're breaking up. So I think we're just sort of going to start like focusing more on our own individual sort of things, our own individual projects. And that being said, I've already started working on an album for me. Like, I wouldn't say an album just yet. I would say more a project. It's sort of project just for me as Trae Scott. So I think we're gonna sort of focus more on our solo stuff. So yeah, and I can't wait to have a sort of a finished project from me. I think it'll be quite exciting. I'm quite excited about sort of making stuff myself, because I feel like it's always easier working in a group, because you've always got that other person or those other people to sort of to help out when you're completely lost or something like that. So it's really interesting to start writing stuff solo, because you've not got that person. You've only got that person inside you, so you need to sort of you need to sort of work with that, and I think also just in general, coming away from my sort of character in Craze Rune to just me is quite difficult, because it's you still sort of you still find yourself writing stuff as that person, but it's not that person, because it's Trae Scott. So yeah, I think what the future holds is a lot more solo stuff from me and Ronan, and I think it just feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, that way, like in this sort of time, it just feels like the right sort of thing to do. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, I'm excited to see what you're gonna come up with. And that's it for today. So thank you again for joining me. Okay.
Yeah, I'll see you later then.
See ya. Bye.